Caribbean Cricket Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things West Indies cricket. By the fans, for the fans.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. We're here to do an IPL special. Marshall, unfortunately, unavailable. He's getting ready to fly out to the Netherlands for West Indies series, but I'm here to talk about the IPL. There's a froze there. As regulars will know, my Wi-Fi is a bit dodgy, so expect that throughout the show. I have to keep it consistent. But as ever, you'll recognize the face with me on screen. Cricket analysis, data expert, all-round cricketing genius, Karthikeya, Static357 on Twitter, as you'll know him. How are you doing?
Good, man. How are you?
Yeah, good. How have you been enjoying the IPL so far? It's been a long tournament. I know you cover pretty much every game. How have you found it so far?
Yeah, it's been fun. I think ups and downs. The start of the tournament was pretty fast. New teams coming in. It's pretty exciting. But then I think in the middle, we went through a bit of a lull. There were not as many close games. But yeah, coming into the business end now should be fun.
And I guess it would take us 5 or 6 hours to talk about the IPL in general, just because of how much happens in every single game across the tournament. But we're here, it's the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. We're here to focus on the West Indians taking part in the tournament. And as you'll know, as a landmark draft, 17 got signed, which is a record. There's been some that have been a success, some that have been a disappointment, a few who haven't got game time. But we're going to go through each player that got signed in the draft and kind of evaluate how their performance has been in the IPL, what's gone right for them, what's gone wrong. And I guess, Karthikeya, there's only one place we have to start, and you'll see his name at the bottom there, Dre Russ himself, the icon. Now, Karthikeya, from my understanding, Dre Russ, he had a disappointing IPL 2021-2020 by his own high standards. And he's sort of come back with a vengeance this year. Highest wicket taker in terms of West Indians, 17. He's been striking at a strike rate of 174, 335 runs, which is decent output considering how low he comes down in the order and his role as an all-rounder. How would you sort of summarize and characterize Dre Russ's performance for Kolkata? Bearing in mind they haven't even qualified for the playoffs.
No, they haven't. But I think the biggest jump for Dre Russ from last year is probably his fitness. Last season, he couldn't get on the park for most of the games. And I think it was similar in 2020. He was really struggling to get on the park. And even if he did, he wasn't able to run. He wasn't able to feel that well. He couldn't get as many overs in. But now, I think whatever work he's done pre-season, I think he might have skipped a bit of the Bangladesh Premier League or whatever. And he went to the US. He got some training in. And I think that's actually really paying off, right? So leading wicket taker, yeah, he's been pulling a lot of the death, a lot of cheap wickets, but I think that's batting is something we already expect from him, right? I know he was disappointing last year, but it was only a matter of time before he put out that kind of output, average 37, strike rate 174 or whatever. I think that's kind of standard for Dre Russ, but yeah, the bowling has been pretty impressive, coming in, doing a job at the death, in the middle overs, whatever, so it's almost like they're getting the full package out of him again.
Yeah, it's like the Russell we saw 4 or 5 years ago, a true all-rounder. And you make an excellent point. I think it was Texas he went to in like December or last year to kind of work on his fitness, because we'd all expect Russell to perform with the bat. We know how amazing he is with the bat, and that quality has never really disappeared throughout his career. But it's the bowling, especially with the fitness issues. Yeah. We thought potentially Russell wouldn't see him bowl 3-4 overs in the T20 match again just because of the fitness issues. And he sort of come back. I think it was against Gujarat Titans. He took 4 wickets in the final over at the death over. And this seems like vintage Russ. In terms of his bowling, have you noticed anything different from a technical point of view? Anything he's changed, his pace, his variations?
No, I think it's been as usual, right? I think even peak Dre Russ, he used to bowl nice back of length balls combined with the Yorker. And I think in general, with so much experience, he obviously has his T20 smarts. But yeah, as we were saying, I think getting on the park for all 14 games, that itself is a huge achievement for himself and KKR.
Would you say it's fair to say he's been an outstanding sort of West Indian so far at IPL so far?
Yeah, I would say so. Probably along with Hetmyer and Narine, but yeah, I think in terms of MVP, definitely.
And we're definitely going to go on to Hetmyer sooner rather than later. But let's just talk on his Kolkata colleague Sunil Narine. Now Sunil Narine so far, obviously the wickets 9 wickets isn't bad, but his economy under 6 still in the IPL, which is remarkable for a bowler who's he's played for so many years. You think people would have worked him out by now and he wouldn't be able to maintain these standards. How has he done it again this year? How has he kept the economy down? How has he kept that mystery?
Yeah, it's kind of unreal, isn't it? Because the last couple of years probably dipped a little bit. There were a few questions about whether he should be retained or not. But yeah, I think he got retained for the lowest price band for them. And I think out of 14 games, I think he went for under 6 runs per over in 10 of those games, which is ridiculous, even for his standards, right? And yeah, I think it's both his off break is turning a lot more. He's getting a little more bite off the pitch, even on flatter tracks, right? And obviously his knuckleball is as effective as ever. So yeah, apart from that, I think he's hardly bowled any bad balls, right? No drag downs, no half volleys. He's been staying in that good length region, which obviously restricts his wickets because the batter knows what's coming. They're not going to give him a wicket away. But yeah, I think 5.57, that's, again, probably one of the best spinners in the league.
I was going to say, because it's sort of 5.57 is what you expect from a mystery spinner who's making their debut in the tournament, and people can't really work him out. So for Narine to do this in his 10th, 11th season is ridiculous, and it's a testament to his quality. It'd be interesting to know, Karthikeya. Obviously, he hasn't officially retired from West Indies action. He's still technically available. Do you think he'd be effective on Australian pitches?
I think he would, because even on the pitches he's played in the IPL, not all of them have been turners or dead pitches, right? He's been able to hold his own even on the flatter tracks. So I think it's a respect he commands as well from batters at this point. I don't think they want to take too many risks against him. So regardless of conditions, I think because of the reputation he has, he definitely has a lot of value.
And what's interesting is we talked about Russell, obviously going back to his all-round game. It's interesting, Kolkata have stopped really using Narine as the pinch-hitting opener. Do you think that's just to allow him to focus more on his bowling, or do you think it was a case of people had sort of worked out his style as coming at the top of the order?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both, right? I think there weren't many situations where they probably thought they could use him. They kept collapsing, and they probably wanted someone who could consolidate their innings, right? They're obviously one of the few teams at the bottom of the table, so their batting never really fired collectively. So I think it's partly that, but I do feel they could have used him a little more as an opener. I think before the IPL, he had a couple of 50s in Bangladesh in the T20 league he was playing, and even the few knocks he's played in the IPL, he's still hit a couple of sixes. So I think they've sort of underused his batting, but I think it's more of a case of how they were collectively poor and probably just needed someone to consolidate the innings in the middle overs.
Yeah, and of course, it's the great irony that the two sort of standout West Indian players we're talking about aren't actually playing for West Indian colours, but hopefully we'll see at least one of them play in the future, although we don't know what's going to happen. From my perspective, it seems unlikely we'll ever see Narine really play in maroon colours just because of the issues he's had with his action and everything. And Dre Russ, it seems like he will commit to big tournaments, but maybe not bilateral series, so we'll have to see how that works out. But we've got one other veteran we need to talk about who's kind of gone under the radar, but DJ Bravo. So he's played 10 matches for Chennai, 16 wickets. Again, he's 38, coming up to 39. For him to do this longevity, take 16 wickets, having come to his veteran status. How impressed have you been with DJ Bravo this year? It's sort of gone under the radar because Chennai have had such a bad season.
Yeah. No, I don't think I expected the kind of performance he's put in, right? And it's not just the 16 wickets. I think, again, death bowling, it's hard to keep your economy low. I think he's been going at under 9 runs per over, something like that, which is very good. So, yeah, I think he's not as fit as he was before. He's not bowling that quick, but he still has those smarts, right? We keep talking about that. He still has a slow ball. He knows what to bowl to who. So I think it's obviously invaluable for them. He was rested for the last few games, but I think that's more because they were already knocked out.
Yeah,
I think in terms of death bowlers, he's been one of the standouts. Yeah.
It's interesting. Obviously, this isn't West Indian specific, but Chennai obviously stuck to a strategy of picking their veteran players, so DJ Bravo, MS Dhoni, Jadeja. Obviously they hasn't worked out. Do you think it was because of that lack of new options in the side that kind of led to them underperforming?
Yeah, I think that definitely plays a role, right? A lot of players were on a decline, so I think collectively the performances went down, and even the younger players that they got on the bench, they had a few 119 guys who didn't actually start, and even Devin Conway was brought into the team right at the back end, and he started performing for them. They didn't play Mahesh Deekshana right at the top, so yeah, I think it took them a while to recalibrate and get adjusted to the fact that a lot of players were on the decline.
Yeah. And now I'm going to go to a big topic. Karthikeya, I know you're a Sunrisers fan. The question people want to know, the West Indian fans want to know, what's happened to Odean Smith and Romario Shepherd? So let's just talk on it. Romario Shepherd, for context, got bought for $1 million US. He's only played, 2 games, I think, for the Sunrisers so far? 2 games. Karthikeya, is it just a case of him not being what they wanted in training sessions, or do you think it's a wider strategy? I know a lot of people have talked about Marco Jansen sort of coming in and taking that overseas spot. Do you think what are the factors that have led to Romario Shepherd not playing as many games as we would like to have seen?
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I think they had a lot of coaching staff, a lot of people making decisions at the auction, right? And I don't think they were on the same page when they bought him for that price check. So I didn't think the price check was going to affect how many games they were going to play. I think they came in, they started with him a couple of games. He wasn't too bad, but I think he went for a few runs, he had a couple of sixes, whatever. But I think once Marco Jansen was available, he was initially in South Africa's test squad. And once he flew in, he came right into the team, and he actually started off very well. His performances kind of dipped later, but Jansen started very well. So there was no way for Romario to come back in, right? And even when Jansen's performances dipped, I think they went for more of the specialist bowlers like Fazal Haq Farooqi and Sean Abbott. So I think once they had their squad, once they fixed on a playing 11, they saw that he wasn't quite the best fit for them.
We've seen, obviously, Kane Williamson struggle for Sunrisers. Do you think that it was unfair on Romario not to get given more of an opportunity, or do you just think the legacy of Kane Williamson means he was never realistically going to get dropped from the side?
Yeah, I don't think Kane Williamson was going to get dropped at any point, but even if he did, there was still Glenn Phillips, so it's another big name he has to jump over. I don't think Romario wanted that spot, right? I think Sunrisers had a lot of Indian seamers, said Umran Malik, Bhuvneshwar, Natraj, and Karthikeya. So it's a lot of Indian players who offer similar skill sets to Romario. And if you want to get in as an overseas player, you probably need to offer something very different, which he didn't at that point for the squad.
Is it a similar story for Odean Smith? Because I think he was bought for just under $1 million, hasn't really played much. Is it a sort of a similar thing? You don't think he was necessarily bought to come into the 11?
No, I don't think so. I think Odean was actually backed for about 6 or 7 games, right? I think he got a good stretch of games before he was dropped. And despite him failing, they kept picking him, hoping that he would come off. So I think they saw him as a good fit to their squad and eventually realized that he's not, because I think we might have spoken about it pre-season as well. Odean's more of a batting all-rounder in T20 at the moment. And they realized they couldn't get 4 overs out of him when they needed to. So I think they kept getting into spots where they couldn't bowl him, and then his overs ended up being saved to the back end and he would mess up there. So I think it was more of a late realization that he's not a fit for their squad, but I think they did see something in him to give him 7 games on the trot.
Yeah, I think that's the problem with sort of price tags in IPL, because the franchises have to spend a certain amount of money, but inevitably when you get bought for a high price, people have high expectations. And obviously Odean Smith and Romario Shepherd are relatively inexperienced. Do you think they'll be back for their franchises next season?
I don't think Romario will be back, right? Because just 2 games. But I can see Odean getting another contract, maybe. I think given he played 7 games, they might see something in him to develop for the future. So I don't think Romario will get retained, but probably an outside chance for Odean.
And obviously, it hasn't been a great season for your Sunrisers. They've been eliminated from playoff contention. But I guess Nicholas Pooran has been a decent player for them this season, coming off the back of probably one of the all-time worst overseas spells at Punjab. He's improved massively coming in at 5. Obviously, he bats for 3 for West Indies now, so he's been playing lower down the order. Worked really well with Aidan Markram. When I spoke to Nicholas Pooran, he said his main issue was a mental issue. But have you noticed anything from the technical side of the game that he's worked on coming into this season?
No, I think it's more of the mental aspect, like you said. So I think last season was kind of like a second season syndrome where everyone knew they were going to bowl pace at him, they were going to shout at him, and he didn't know what to do. But I think more than the technical improvement, I don't think there's been much in that sense, apart from the fact that he has been more stable at the crease. But I think he's aware what's coming at him, and he's been patient enough to play out those short balls and back himself when the other balls come at him, right? Usually when you have a short ball weakness, you're probably sitting back, and even when you get the filler balls, you're not as confident because you're expecting the back of the length ball. But I think he's been confident in terms of just playing out whatever balls are not in his arc, and then cash in when he can.
Yeah, and sort of, how do you think that being a wicket keeper as well? Do you think that would have, because I guess at Punjab he wasn't a wicket keeper, he wasn't involved in the game. Do you think being a wicket keeper has added to like that responsibility and kind of improved his batting performances as well, or do you think that it wouldn't have had an effect?
Yeah, I don't think it affects him much in terms of batting, but I think, like you said, he's getting more involved in the game, and obviously Hassan captain now. Yeah, so I think he's been involved in terms of field sets, changes, and I think just being more involved in the game can improve your game sense eventually, right? Knowing what to do in what situation. I think that's one of the hallmarks of why Pollard is such a good player, for example. So I think that's slowly coming into his game.
And let's move on briefly, because I know this is another one of your favorite players, Fabian Allen. So he was bought from Mumbai for relatively. Oh, you there? Yeah. Okay. Sorry, we just froze there. Karthikeya with taking my bad Wi-Fi signal there. So Fabian Allen, he was bought for a relatively low price considering his sort of what he brings to T20 games and his experience in the IPL. I think it was just under $200,000 if I'm not mistaken, like 175 or something. He's only played 1 game for Mumbai. Is this poor strategy for Mumbai? We've seen a lot of criticism about Tim David not getting enough games. Fabian Allen, bearing in mind he can bowl, he can bat, he can field, and bearing in mind Mumbai at bottom of the table, is it scandalous that Fabian Allen hasn't played more than 1 game, Karthikeya?
Yeah, I think it's more scandalous that Tim David didn't get all the games, right? Because he was one of the top T20 batters coming into the tournament. And I think they've seen when they played him in the last couple of games, he's obviously fired, and everyone's like, why didn't he play before? But I think that was the case with them. They already had Pollard, they already had David, who are kind of lower order bats, can bowl a little bit. And Fabian probably falls in the same category as them, but he doesn't have the same reputation to get into the 11 ahead of them, right? And in terms of bowling, they probably don't see him adding more value than your local finger spinners, right? So I think that's why he missed out. Obviously, he was one of the MVPs in the West Indies summer prior to the World Cup, right? So I think he's the kind of player who's going to add value regardless of where you put him in, but for Mumbai, again, probably not the best fit to come into the 11.
And Kieron Pollard at Mumbai as well. How have you seen his spell this season?
Yeah, it's been uncharacteristic for him, right? Not often do you see him go without a single impactful performance. So I think there were signs even in the India series prior to the IPL where teams were targeting him with wide lines, and I think there were a few technical issues. He was kind of closing the face of the bat. He wasn't able to hit over the offside. Teams kind of worked that out. And when he came into the IPL, bowlers started banging the ball in, and his reflexes weren't as good. So I think there were multiple weaknesses creeping up into his game at the same time, and he probably didn't have enough time to work on it mid-season, so to speak. So
It's interesting.
kind of concerning as well.
Yeah, it's interesting because he's obviously 35, so you'd imagine any decline he's having now is partly related to age as well, coming to that age. How do you see him kind of maintaining his place in the IPL at Mumbai? Would he have to potentially become a specialist finisher, focus more on bowling? How do you see a way back for Pollard to regain his form next season?
Yeah, it's interesting because he's now retired, right? So I think when Pollard committed to the West Indies, he completely gave up on all contracts but the IPL.
Yeah.
Previously, he used to go to the Big Bash, Bangladesh, Pakistan, whatever. Completely gave up on all that. So probably has more time to play lower tier cricket and bring his game back up, right? Because when you're just playing for the West Indies and IPL, it's always high quality cricket. You're always going to get targeted. But having the chance to go to, say, the T20 Blast in England, I think he got signed a couple of days ago. Probably get him into a bit of rhythm to get his game up. So probably for the better, if I were to say.
Do you think it's just, so as you said, do you think it's just a case of when you're playing international cricket regularly and missing out on T20 franchise cricket, you're sort of behind the pack because you're missing out on the innovations and kind of players and trends that are going along in franchise cricket?
I think it's a double-edged sword, right? Because when you're playing internationals, you're always facing top-level bowlers. So you're getting good training in. But at the same time, I think when people figure out a couple of weaknesses, like we saw with Pollard, with wide lines, hard lengths, wrist spin, whatever. I think there were 3 weaknesses at the same time, and there was almost nowhere to go in terms of getting his confidence back up, his level back up, right? So I think in that sense, playing a bit of lower level cricket will help him out. Just for any, like, similar to any youngster starting off, right? You get put in the hot zone and then you probably have to go back, work on your game a little bit, which I think should happen with Pollard as well.
And I think the thing with Pollard is similar to Dre Russ. He's someone who holds himself to high standards. So I can imagine he'd be more motivated than ever to want to come back stronger in next season's IPL, as will Mumbai as a whole as a franchise, because it will be embarrassing for them to finish in the bottom place at the moment. So they'll definitely want to come back stronger, and you'd imagine Pollard will be part of that resurgence. One other player again for Delhi Capitals, so Rovman. He's someone who, since the England series has kind of re-emerged onto the scene in terms of, we've always known in West Indies he's had talent, but he's never been able to prove it at the highest level. He's sort of come through. How have you kind of seen him in Delhi's as that kind of finisher?
Yeah, I think he was disappointing at the start. I don't think it was a case of bad form, as people might attribute it to, because he was coming on a run of red hot form, both against England and India, right? So I think it was just a bit of bad luck. He was hitting the ball to the fielders, but it was really in the mid half of the season where he was hitting 40 of 20 balls for fun, right? And that's what we're expecting from him at this level now, because of the improvement that's gone into his game. He's playing spin a lot better than before, at least defensively, if not in terms of hitting ability, right? And against pace, we already know how good he is. So yeah, I think his game is progressing very nicely, and he'd probably be a good fit for the West Indies as well as a right-hander, right? Because Pooran, Hetmyer, Evan Lewis, they're all left-handers, but Rovman breaking that series of left-handers will be pretty important.
And one other player as well, Jason Holder. He's sort of, again, been quietly going about his work. 14 wickets across 12 matches, showing improvements. Do you think he should be someone who has a regular place in that West Indies T20 side?
Yeah, definitely he should. But I think he's been kind of underwhelming this year in the IPL. In 2020 and 2021, his economy was very good, but I think this season he's been going at over 9 and over, which is a little concerning. But I think given how good that Lucknow bowling attack is, he's fit in there quite nicely. But I think just getting this kind of T20 experience under his belt, right? He's been playing a bit of Big Bash, CPL as well. So complement that with this kind of high level experience, getting a full season of the IPL. I think they'll hold him in good stead over someone like Romario, Odean, who are not able to hold their own for a series of 12, 13 games.
And what do you think about, speaking of sort of strike bowlers, Obed McCoy? He's sort of come back into the Rajasthan fold in the last 2 games.
Yeah.
He's only played a handful of games, but he's someone, obviously, he's our power play bowler, our strike bowler in the T20 format. How have you sort of seen him? How has he sort of adjusted to IPL levels?
Yeah, I think he had a hard time when he played initially, right? Rahman Bowler took him on, and even the game before, I don't think he had the best outing. But it was mostly because of lack of match practice. I don't think he played a professional game since the World T20 back in October or something. It's a long gap, and the back of hand slow ball was going all wrong. He was bowling 5 wides down the leg side. He was bowling 2 wide outside off stump. But I think getting back up to speed at this level, he was able to get more control on that back of hand ball in the last couple of games. I think he spoke about it today, but he was also bowling an off cutter when his back of hand was going wrong. So I think just getting back up to rhythm and doing what he was doing pre-World Cup, right? When I think the series against Australia and South Africa, he was like the standout West Indies bowler. So I think this is almost kind of expected from him. He just had to get his rhythm up to what he wanted to.
Yeah, I think, like you said, being injured and coming straight into the IPL, it's going to be hard for him to catch up. But he's shown it in the last 2 games, especially today, that he sort of has that quality to take wickets, keep the economy down. So he's someone who I'm looking forward to seeing how he does at the World Cup in Australia. You'd think the pitches would suit him as well. So it'd be interesting to see how his sort of line and length works there. Obviously, we have to give honourable mention. When you have 17 West Indians in the IPL, not all of them are going to play, limited to 4 overseas per side. So Dominic Drake, Shafane Rutherford, Karl Mayers, unfortunately, have not got a game so far, unlikely to get games. But I guess Karthikeya, even if you're not playing, it's still a great experience to sort of be around an IPL franchise.
Yeah, I think so. I think for Mayers, he probably could have played a bit of first-class cricket back home, right? I don't think Drake's and Rutherford are in the red ball setup, so probably better for them to be around the circuit. I think Rutherford in particular, he doesn't play much, so it's kind of frustrating for him. Wherever he goes, he probably sits on the bench. I think he's good enough to start in certain leagues, but it's probably in that middle phase where he hasn't gotten enough experience, but he's still good enough in terms of talent and potential, right? So
yeah, he seems to be someone who's popular, especially in the PSL. He seems to be a sort of fan favorite, and that sort of seems to be his favorite league. Do you see a place for him in the West Indies T20 squad?
No, I don't think so at the moment, right? Because there's already so much batting talent in the middle order, especially with Hetmyer, Pooran, Rothman, Allen. Even with Pollard moving out, I think there's so much hitting power already in the middle overs. So I think Shafin probably has to get more cricket. Just that.
Well, the interesting thing about Shafane Rutherford is that he sort of gives the impression he's not that bothered about playing for West Indies. Sort of get the sense. I'd be interested to see if he sort of just remains a franchise sort of player. And one guy who we do want to see in West Indies colours sooner rather than later, West Indies selectors made a call, but he's obviously had a child recently, so he's taken paternity leave. Shimron Hetmyer, iconic run for Rajasthan. Karthikeya, just how good has Hetmyer been this season?
Yeah, I think we saw signs of it last year at Delhi as well, right? He was getting that finisher role consistently, and he's probably one of the standout finishers in the tournament. But this level of consistency, probably something even I didn't expect, right?
Yeah.
I think game after game, he's been getting those 30s, 40s, 50s. He's been finishing at an excellent strike rate. So I think massive improvement, obviously. I don't think it was ever a potential or ability thing with Hetmyer, right? It was just a matter of getting that consistency into his game, getting his mindset right as well. I think a couple of situations where he's been put in over number 11 or 12 when they've lost 4 wickets, and he's actually had to reconstruct the innings and then launch at the back end, which we're not used to seeing from him. Usually he'd play a big shot and get out.
Hmm.
So I think those kind of minor improvements have gone in, and I think that kind of shows how he always had the ability before, right? Because it's not like he's made massive technical changes to his game. It's just a few mindset switches that have taken him up 2 or 3 levels.
And would you say his strong point is still playing spin? Has that sort of helped him?
I wouldn't say so actually, because he's probably played like 40 balls of spin versus like over 100, like 120 balls of pace or something. So it's a very skewed split. I think his pace game is what is helping him a lot at the moment. In terms of spin, it's actually kind of concerning because he hasn't played spin in the IPL for the last couple of seasons. He's been used almost exclusively as a pace hitter, but I think going back to Guyana and the CPL, he'll probably bat up at 3 or 4 or something like that.
Yeah.
Probably won't get the finisher's role, especially if he's captain or something. So I think different roles in different leagues, he'll probably get himself up to speed in terms of his spin game. But yeah, I think his pace game has been the shining quality in the last couple of seasons.
Excellent stuff. We managed to blitz through the 17 players in the IPL. But Karthikeya, I've got an interesting question. If you could pick sort of a player or two from the West Indies region who you think could make a mark at the IPL or should be at the IPL, is there anyone potentially under 25, younger, who you would say in a year or two I can see them doing well in the IPL?
I think it's kind of hard because 17 of them already there. That's almost the entire pack, right? But I think one guy who probably would feel hard done is Akhil Hussain.
Yeah.
One of the standout players coming into the IPL auction, right? I think probably merited a pick over some of the other spinners that got picked. And his batting has shown a bit of improvement as well. So I think if there's someone who could break in soon, it's probably Akhil.
It's interesting because, yeah, I agree. Kieron Pollard was unlucky, I guess, as well. Just the amount of spinners in the IPL is always going to be hard for him to get a deal. Jayden Seales would seem like an obvious candidate, but it seems like his career at the moment is primarily focused on red ball cricket. He's obviously playing regional games. He's obviously in the West Indies white ball side, but I don't know if we'll see him play much franchise cricket over the next year or so. But you'd imagine in 3-4 times, surely Jayden Seales got to be playing in the IPL.
Yeah, for sure. I think Alzari started off similarly, right? He didn't play much of IPL. He probably got a couple of games from Mumbai in between, but there was like a replacement pick or something. But Alzari focused a lot on ODIs and Test cricket at the start of his career, but now carrying about 7 or 8 games in the IPL. That's a good transition. So probably something similar in terms of career paths for Seales as well. Focus on the longer formats and then ease his way into the IPL.
And now I guess Karthikeya, the big final question. Obviously your boy Sunrisers, they're not going to be in the final. I think so. We've got Lucknow, Gujarat, Rajasthan have qualified, and as of recording, it's between Delhi and RCB for that 4th spot. So there's going to be a new champion, a new champion lifting the trophy on Sunday the 29th. Karthikeya, who do you see? What team do you see winning that trophy?
I think it's hard to look past Gujarat, right? I think they've been very clutch. I don't think they were the best team on paper coming in, but they've been very clutch. So hard to look past, and they'll probably be playing at home as well for the final. So, but I think dark horses would probably be one of DC or RCB, whoever qualified. They're going to have the momentum coming in. So I think
on that note, that also reminds me, we forgot one player, Evan Lewis. So Evan Lewis has sort of batted at. He played a few games, came in at number 3 because of the obviously settled openers at the side. Sort of, it's hard to kind of evaluate him having not played games. But do you think Evan Lewis is suited to come in at number 3?
No, I don't think so. I think he relies on that opening cushion that he gets right in the power play with the field restrictions, hitting gaps, hitting over the top. I don't think he's that used to starting against spin in the middle overs. So. Yeah, it's hard to judge him. He played 1 match-winning knock, struggled in the other games, but hard to judge him in an unfavorable role or new role, so to speak.
Yeah, of course. But Karthikeya, absolute pleasure to get your insights onto the IPL. And we'll see if your prediction comes right on Sunday. Where can people find you on social media?
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter at static_8357. And you can find me on Instagram as well at Karthikeya Manchala. So.
Excellent, perfect. And for those wondering, I'll obviously put all the details of Static social media in the comments on this video. So guys, thank you very much for tuning into this West Indians in IPL 2022 special, and we hope to see you again soon.
We rule the cricket world. Now the rules.
Welcome to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things West Indies cricket. By the fans, for the fans.